People who are related to celebrities, how has their fame affected family gatherings and events? I had an aunt that had a role in a commercial. It was for Life Touch. She was the old lady lying on the ground who said, "I've fallen and I can't get up." She was a scream and must have done that line 1,000 times during our family dinners, even though everybody in North America has seen that commercial dozens of times. She only got recognized a couple of times. She was once recognized in a mall and laid down on the floor and said the line. People were cheering and clapping. My wife is a distant relative of Tom Hanks. It doesn't affect her at all. It affects me because she reminds me of it every time he is mentioned on the TV. Related to Kings of Leon through marriage. Pretty cool group of guys. We have a family reunion every May and hang out and play horseshoes, etc., just like everyone else. It's kind of funny because even here in my tiny little town, they still act like they're going to be bombarded by fans, but literally nobody recognizes them. My uncle is Steve Smith, aka Red Green, the Canadian handyman comedy show from the 90s. We used to all gather in the 90s and 2000s when our generation had wedding season. He was always the life of the party, without ever trying. If there was a lull in the conversation, he'd pipe in with something hysterical and have the whole table laughing. Never tried. He was just a natural and would never interrupt anyone else. He is a very kind and wonderful guy. We'd go to tapings of the show and would howl, not only at the show, but at the countrified studio audience. It was all in good fun. I think the only effect it had at gatherings was on our very excited significant others meeting him for the first time. We only gather once in a while now as he is winding down a bit. He's in his 70s now and enjoying semi-retirement. The fam tells me that we bear a strong resemblance, which is nice. Spouse is related to David Tennant. I did not know this until after we were married. Not impacted my life at all, except I got to meet him during my first trip to London. Their family scored us tickets to Much Ado About Nothing, and we saw David Tennant and Catherine Tate after the show. Nothing bad to say about either of them. They were both lovely and effusive, and Tennant gave us both a hug even though neither of us had ever met him before. Spouse had a brief chat about mutual acquaintances in the family, and then we left. My grandfather was Charles Schulz, the creator of Peanuts, Charlie Brown. I don't really know how it affected my family gatherings because my family hasn't been together for a long time for other reasons, but I do know that for a few members of the family, the comics are really important to them, and they really pride themselves in their involvement with them. Not me, but one of my friends is an Indian woman who moved here with her family when she was a little kid. When she graduated college, her parents started asking her when she was going to get married and introducing her to the sons of their friends, hoping they'd hit it off. Eventually, it worked. They introduced her to a really nice guy who was also born in India but lived in the same state as us most of the year. She didn't find out until a month or two into the relationship that he was a famous Bollywood star. He was just completely unknown in the US. They're married now, and it seems like such a strange dichotomy. When they're in the US, they live the same as any other, wealthy American couple. But Indian tabloids covered their wedding and interviewed her to see what kind of woman would attract such a star. When they walk into a restaurant in his hometown in India, the owner will sometimes shut down so they can eat alone, and will give them the meal for free because it's worth it just for the publicity that they ate there. My friend is pretty quiet and a bit shy, so I think she's really glad that they live in the US most of the time. But it's definitely an interesting life, not to mention her parents are very happy. Megan Fox is my first cousin once removed. Her mother and my grandfather are brother and sister. She's 6 years older than me, so there are plenty of pictures of us playing together while growing up. But once she got to the point of puberty, she quickly shifted into modeling and moved from Tennessee to Florida to pursue it. She then got into movies and, as you know, made it rather big. The last time she was in town to visit was about 12 years ago. She came for Christmas and everything seemed normal until she whipped out a stack of headshots that she had brought to sign for us to take back to our friends and such. She did make a point to call my grandfather when he had his heart attack back in 2014, so not all is lost in fame. The headshots thing was just a tad comical. My aunt is Xena, the warrior princess, and absolutely nothing at family gatherings. She is just our aunt. We got stopped a couple of times in New Orleans by people who recognized her. Back in New Zealand, when her show was going on, some little girls would come up and want to take pics. She's one of the nicest people to talk to and never acts like a celebrity. I've gotten to do some very cool stuff in my life which I'll never take for granted because of her kindness. Hey Lucy, I'll let you guess which one of us it is if you're out there. I'm related distantly to Elvis Presley. Went to the Presley family reunion years back. It was freaking stupid. Tried to get me to pay $20 for a plate of food at a family reunion. Related to Keanu Reeves. We have a Reeve Ohana gathering every year in Hawaii, and he never comes, which I don't blame him for at all. His dad was not a good father, so I assume besides being a busy actor, he didn't come because that burned the bridges with our family. My dad sometimes mentions Keanu when the reunions happen, about how he doesn't visit. It's not in a bitter way or anything, just sometimes little cousins ask. I haven't met all my family in Hawaii yet because I live on the mainland, but I do know at least a few people are salty about it. Other than that, my cousins look up to him and get excited when he's in a movie. Even if the kids aren't allowed to watch because of violence, they see a movie poster and look all awestruck. So cute. Kind of unheard of, but Alex Pietrangelo, professional hockey player, is my stepbrother. Usually see him during the summer, and we go out on his boat. Swell dude. Related to Dwayne Johnson, regularly smell what he's cooking. My ex was related to Seamus Heaney, an Irish poet that was very famous in Ireland. From what I understand, we stayed at his house a few years ago and I had never heard of him. He was just lovely, like a grandpa you would love to have. Very humble and a normal house. Ex's mom kept bigging him up, but Seamus and his wife were just normal people. The weird thing was walking into bookstores and seeing his face everywhere, then going back home to have lunch with him or chat with him about life. I say this without any condescension whatsoever, but this guy's poetry is taught in English classes all over Europe, not just the UK and in Ireland. He's probably the most famous contemporary English language poet, at least over here in Europe. I guess from what you said, you probably read some of his poetry, but if you haven't, I'll recommend it. My dad is first cousins with Tommy Mottola, formerly Mr. Mariah Carey. Tommy used to provide free tickets to concerts for the various stars he represented, Carly Simon, Hall & Oates, but as more and more people had their hands out, the more he retreated. My professor last semester turned out to be Matt Damon's stepdad. School gossip says he canceled class for J-Lo and Ben Affleck's wedding and then abruptly uncanceled it when the wedding didn't work out. My cousin is Danny Mathers, the Playboy model who took that picture of the woman in the gym. We hate her. My ex-wife is related to Richard Ramirez. Yes, the Night Stalker. He comes up at every single family gathering, big or small. They would talk about him for hours. Same stories, same reactions. As the years went by, he slowly started to disappear from the conversations. Then he goes and makes national news when he dies. We were already divorced when it happened, but that did not stop her family from reaching out to me telling me in detail all about his life and death. It still comes up every time I come across any of them. Can't tell if it's pride or sorrow. Not really a celebrity, but my uncle is one of the first dozen people Bill Gates hired to start Microsoft. He's stupid rich now, but spends his time being super generous with his money to family and advocating for the protection of national parks and a healthy environment. Probably the nicest and most down-to-earth people I've ever met. He never buys anything unnecessary if he can help it. He does all he can to make his house 100% environmentally friendly. He's pretty awesome. You'd never know that he helped change the world. My girlfriend's cousin is on Orange is the New Black. Got to watch her place in New York once. She can't get me Kate Mulgrew's autograph, so she's dead to me. My uncle played for the Toronto Maple Leafs as a goalie in the 80s and 90s. The other NHL teams a bit later. He stayed pretty down to earth about it. Realistically, he was never incredibly famous. He was just part of our family. He moved to Orlando a while ago and had a falling out with some people. I haven't seen him or his daughters in probably a decade or more. Now he only comes up because fathers of people I know recognize my unique last name and don't know why. A few times people asked right away if my uncle and I are related, but it seems those times have passed. My dad's cousin is an actor with a couple of hundred IMDb entries who's currently playing a role in one of my favorite TV shows. Don't want to say his name because it's the same last name as mine. I've met him 3 times. He lives in LA, and every time he comes back to town, one of my uncles will throw a dinner party for him, and the entire extended family will show up. It's really the only thing that can make that happen. Really nice guy though, a great storyteller. A distant relative wrote Beverly Hills Chihuahua. I'm sorry. My neighbor when I was 12 was the guitarist for Matchbox 20 around when they were all over the radio. My dad plays a lot of guitars, so he would go over and they would play for a few hours and chill. Got to meet the rest of the band and they were all really cool down-to-earth guys. Did you get to meet Sinbad? Matchbox beat his testicles! I'm relatively closely related to J.K. Rowling, and to be honest, it doesn't affect family gatherings at all. Either people whisper about her from afar or go up and have a conversation with her. Most people don't make a big deal of it, and she does the same and just chats with anyone that speaks to her. The biggest reaction I ever got is when someone finds out I'm related to her. I facetiously asked my best friend if he had a rich uncle, and he said, actually, his uncle is a best-selling author. I couldn't believe he never mentioned it before. It's out of respect for him that I'm not boasting about the name right now. There have been quarrels over characters that allegedly resemble family members in ways they felt were less than flattering or too direct from life. You plagiarized my divorce! We're dating now, and he's taking me to a family reunion in August. I'm already starstruck. My cousins are in the band Cage the Elephant. My cousins are so down to earth that their fame doesn't really affect our family. We are all so close, even though we live so far away, and they invite us to their concerts when they're in town. I will say when we plan family reunions, everyone's first question is, will the boys be on tour then? Of course, this is because everyone wants all the family there, and my cousins are usually the busiest out of everyone with schedules that are pretty finite. Overall, it has brought us all closer to having such successful people who worked hard in our family. My dad is very proud of his nephews and is always promoting their music, which is cool. My wife is a childhood friend with the family of Viggo Mortensen. She got to hang out with him after he shot Lord of the Rings, but before it was released. Said he was a very cool guy, extremely laid back and fun to have a drink with. Her friend spent her childhood hanging out with him on summer vacations and has yet to have a bad thing to say about him. I refuse to believe that Aragorn could be anything less than a great guy. Dude bought a woman a horse that was used in the Lord of the Rings movies because she loved it so much, but she couldn't afford to bid on it at the auction. We had to have a freaking Daily Mail journalist at a family reunion lunch once. I hated that. Late to the party, throwaway, not so much to protect my identity, more so to protect my main account. My dad is a former, although not officially retired, professional wrestler. He signed to WWE, is in the WWE Hall of Fame, and is good friends with someone on a popular TV show that airs on A&E. My dad's fame has affected me, and at the same time it hasn't. My parents moved us to a very, very rural small town to raise my sister and me as normally as possible. The main difference between me and 90% of the other people that live here is we are extremely wealthy, though we try not to flaunt it. I get cool perks sometimes, movie premieres, backstage to any WWE event, being at parties with more well-known celebrities. I've had a few teachers subtly offer me a higher grade for an autograph. My dad got recognized a lot more when I was younger, but I only remember bits and pieces of that. My mom is a substitute teacher in our local school district, so really, when here, she gets recognized more than he does. Distant family calls and asks for stuff occasionally. I've led a pretty normal life for the most part. My life is more hectic when we go out with his friend. He has a very distinct look. Even if you've never seen the show, you can tell what show he is on just by looking at him. When he comes to visit, he gets bombarded, especially because of where we live, and nobody glances at my dad unless they're a hardcore wrestling fan. His glory days were late 80s and 90s, but he's still involved with WWE occasionally. This probably isn't that exciting, but my grandmother's cousin is Bob Hope. Hey, something I can meaningfully contribute to. My uncle is Sinbad, the comedian/actor. He is married to my biological aunt on my dad's side, so I am not his blood relation, but his kids and wife are blood related to me. It actually hasn't. We go on vacations with them every summer and have for the past 6 years or so. We didn't for a while when he and my aunt were separated, but after they got back together, we saw that family at least once a year. Just got back from a vacation with them on Sunday actually, and we went on a Royal Caribbean cruise. At first, it was a little annoying having to stop every couple of minutes because someone asked for a picture, but eventually he stopped posing for pictures while with us. He just says, "Sorry, I'm with my family now." Nothing terribly exciting, but he has been famous since I was born, so I didn't get a before and after experience. The coolest thing was definitely going to Disney/Universal with him. We got the VIP treatment and skipped every line. We rode dueling dragons probably 5 to 7 times back to back. 3 of us barfed. It was great. My coworker is a distant cousin of Vanilla Ice. She hasn't seen him in years. The last time she saw him was at a wedding when they were both older kids. She remembers him acting like a jerk and pushing somebody into a pool. My uncle is Dr. Demento. He's a really cool guy, insanely knowledgeable about music and music history. He is totally cool at family gatherings. Some family reunions I've been to have been in Preston, Idaho, where Napoleon Dynamite was filmed. They're not celebrities, but I guess we have a couple of family members who were in the movie, and the chicken farm Napoleon works at is owned by a family member as well. Naturally, the movie is a frequent topic of conversation at the reunions. I have a cousin who is a former pop starlet and minor TV personality back in the old country. She live tweeted our grandmother's funeral. I remember thinking, frickin' millennials, man. Robin Sparkles? Apparently, Janet Horne, the last witch to be executed in Britain, is my fourth great-grandmother. I only recently just found out after her name was scoured out of the old family Bible tree. My 105-year-old great-grandmother was not allowed to talk about her when she was younger. My cousin was Miss Universe. She got a lot of attention at family gatherings, which are like every weekend in Puerto Rico, but that was about it. The Simpsons. My mom's second cousin is/was a writer for The Simpsons, Tim Long. I got 2 signed t-shirts. Garrison Keillor, who hosts a Prairie Home Companion, is a relative of some kind. I've met him when I was really little, but I do remember he was awesome at reading children's books because of his voice. Apparently, some members of the family don't like him because he doesn't hand out freebies, tickets, backstage invitations, etc., and is generally protective of his work. I have no idea, as I haven't seen him for over 20 years. I once got invited to McDonald's and I was going to get some McNuggets when I met Ronald freaking McDonald. He signed my Big Mac and we chilled with the Hamburglar. Did this affect my life? Not at all. My third cousin on my mom's side is Rob Borden, drummer of Linkin Park. I met him once in 2001 at a family party, literally right before In the End got big. I was like 5, but he was so nice to me, especially since it was shortly after our grandfather's death, and I was taking it pretty hard. Unfortunately, a lot of the more Catholic folks of my family got pretty pissy at him because he announced an interest in Judaism. I haven't spoken to him since. I would love to talk to him, but I don't want to look like those family members who would probably want a handout. My stepdad is Professor Brian Cox. Some of his old school friends treat him differently, but that's probably normal for fame. My aunt on my mom's side posts on Facebook about how he's her brother-in-law pretty often to get attention. She's gone pretty nuts, and that's the least she's done for attention and sympathy. And my dad directed Brass Eye Snuff Box and Toast of London. Not really a celebrity, but one of my high school friends won Face Off. She's extremely talented. I personally know someone who went to high school with Taylor Swift. He says she was a total weirdo and actually a total asshole, and no one liked her. I live in the US, but my aunt Konkana Sen Sharma is a very famous Indian actress, upcoming director, and my grandmother is a world-recognized director, but much better known in India. I don't go to India at all that often, so I'm not very affected by my relation to them, but once when I was in India, we were at a coffee place and these 2 girls came up to my aunt wanting an autograph. I felt really awkward and confused because this hasn't ever happened to me before. I was also so confused because I've never gotten the sense that they were celebrities because they acted like regular people. I always feel like celebrities just act in a different manner than other people. I realized why I thought that after seeing the interviews of my aunt and grandmother that my mom watched sometimes. They acted differently, in the way you'd expect celebrities to act during interviews or talk shows than how they had ever talked to me. My first cousin on my father's side is James Roday. He has always been the type of guy, even as a kid, we all knew was going to be famous. He just always had that it factor, so when he became famous, those of us in the immediate family just saw it as an end to the means. The only uncomfortable thing to happen at a family function was at my grandmother's funeral. It was obviously a very emotional time, but my brother's wife at the time didn't see it as such and was taking an opportunity to snap as many selfies and candid "look at me with Sean from Psych" photos as possible. He was very tactful about it though, and graciously granted her as much as he could handle until my brother made her chill out. Jamie is a good dude, man. Definitely one of the people in my life that I am most proud of because he earned every bit of fame and fortune he has received, all the while staying incredibly humble. I'm a descendant of John Milton, the poet, Paradise Lost. You know that music video with the guy on the boat with all the bikini babes? Well, my life is like that, except the boat is our basement and the babes are my mom. Weird Al Yankovic is my second cousin on my mom's side, but I've never met him. His mom or grandmother or something moved to California a long time before either of us were born, so that part of the family isn't connected to us anymore. My uncle is an actor, most notably the dad of the werewolf kid, the guy in the wheelchair. That's my uncle. He was in Hell or High Water recently playing opposite Jeff Bridges. Bunch of other stuff too. No, it doesn't really affect family gatherings. He's taken my other uncle and cousins to a premiere or two. Never me, though. Not a celebrity per se, but my mom's cousin is the current CEO of Kroger. I guess that it's close enough since he's rich as hell and was in a Macy's Thanksgiving parade a couple of years back. I've never met him. He's very good to his mom, though, despite the fact that she lives in the middle of nowhere, Appalachia. His very existence does color a surprising amount of conversations though, mainly in the vein of my family telling me that I'm lazy. Don't I know that he started out bagging groceries? Don't I know that he worked so hard and was so loyal to the company that it eventually paid off? Working 6 days a week and being repeatedly passed over for a promotion is no excuse. Work 7 days a week, triple shifts. Rodney would. Considering how quiet and nice they also told me he is, I gotta wonder what he would think about that. My uncle is Peter Weller, aka RoboCop. Every time we go out to dinner, he tells these really cool stories about all the other famous people he has met and how he's friends with Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's really cool to listen to his stories for hours on end. I have 2 aunts on Real Housewives. They were always gaudy and trashy before, still gaudy and trashy now. We avoid them as much as possible. Also, my great uncle on the other side was Ernest, a la Ernest Goes to Jail, Jim Varney. Doesn't affect me because he passed away a while ago. Affects my boyfriend because I bring it up every time we see any of his movies. Late to this, but my friend's uncle is Will Smith. Apparently he doesn't really speak to much of his family anymore because they were always asking for money and whatnot. My stepdad is Rowan Atkinson, the guy who played Mr. Bean. Anytime there's a family gathering of any significance, he puts on the suit and shows up as Mr. Bean. He won't break character the entire night, and it is impossible to have a conversation with him. He says he does it for the kids, but it's obvious he enjoys it. I think he misses doing the show. My husband is Jason Rubin, creator of the video game Crash Bandicoot and the company Naughty Dog. I'm very proud of him. He is a very kind person and also the smartest human I've ever met. Also very funny. Sometimes people recognize him and that makes me very proud. One of my best friends is the daughter of a pretty successful actor in Hollywood. Her parents got divorced when she was 5 or 6. We're 21 now, and when he remarried another actress a few years later, he pretty much cut her and her brother out of his life. He came to our high school graduation, but other than that, she only really hears from him over email once or twice a year. One of my cousins was a fairly significant gangster. During my grandfather's funeral, he showed up with about 20 dudes in black suits. Our family offered them some food, and one of the dudes politely declined to say, "We don't eat until the boss says we eat." The dude who said this was in his 50s, and my cousin was barely 30. My sister was famous in the early 2000s. She was on a show and interviewed by a bunch of big-time nightly hosts about every magazine. But she was still my sister. How I felt about her didn't change. It was annoying going out because people would always stop and ask for pictures. I met somewhat famous people hanging with her, got free tickets to things. Mostly, I remembered her kicking me off the computer because she had emails. Well, it was my turn on the computer and I was playing Roller Coaster Tycoon. My uncle's not exactly a celebrity, but he works in Hollywood and has directed a couple of pretty big movies, and I think some TV, written some stuff and worked on some freaking big classic movies and TV shows. He still works there, but now he's also written a fantastic book and teaches all over the world. I think he started designing theme park stuff for film properties, but I'm not sure. He seems to thoroughly enjoy his life. The perks are killer. He's friends with some of the biggest people in entertainment. One flew him to another city to see his show and hang out. I assume he's good on money. They're pretty low-key. He and his wife take killer vacations all the time. He travels all over the world for work, and he and his wife are some of the nicest down-to-earth people and are very close to the family. I've received some killer swag from the stuff he's worked on that I've kept for years and years. I admired him more and more as I got older and started to understand what he did for a living and how he got there. He legit started at nothing, eating macaroni every night and working his ass off to get where he is. I think that's why he's so humble. My dad's cousin is a singer. He's huge in Mexico and Latin America and has sold out Staples Center. It's pretty cool. Never personally met him yet, but I know he comes to our big family reunions in Mexico. Not related, but I do martial arts, so I know a ton of former and current MMA champions. They coach or train at my gym/affiliation. It's still a smallish sport. Most people don't recognize them when we go to dinner or something. Most will just stop and ask for a pic if they do. The cool part is having them bring big-name celebrities. Met Channing Tatum and his wife, exactly as charming and cool off-screen. Jenna is even better looking in person if that's possible. Ludacris, Dave Bautista, Bruce Lee's sister, and a few more people. I'm just another face to them, but still an awesome experience anyway. Met some fighters that were assholes on screen but quickly learned how quiet they were in person, and that was just for show. It sucks hearing people trash on them once you get to know them. Almost all the fighters I know are great people. My first coach had the UFC frick up his drug test and was accused of doping. Even once he cleared his name, that damage is hard to reverse. People attacked his wife and kids on Twitter and social media, death threats, because they're not big enough to be untouchable. It's a lot more personal when they're a target. I'm a distant relative to Gandhi. My great-uncle said that his mom told him that Gandhi was a nice guy when it came to his village and people, but was an asshole to his family. Thanks for watching until the end. Are you related to a celebrity? Tell us about it in the comments below. Then be sure to like this video, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that you know when our next video is up. For more videos like this one right now, please stop by our channel. Thanks again, and see you next time.